Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the first of two panel discussions that will take us through to lunch. The first is this one on getting diversity and inclusion right. Why is diversity important? What benefits does it bring? How do we make the case for diversity and inclusion? What needs to change at the top, and what changes can we all drive? And the question that I'll put to our panel first in a second, which is, what do we mean by diversity and inclusion? A very big topic, and we've got three fantastic panellists to take us through it. I'll go first to Geeta Singham-Willis, who's the Strategic Engagement Director at Transform. We'll then hear from Ruby Carr, who's the Inclusion Officer at the BCS Digital Divide Specialist Group, BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT. She's also Chief Enterprise Architect with various roles across public and private sector. And we also have Sherlock Tishiavi, the Head of Security Architecture at the Office for Nuclear Regulation. I think you probably know how it works by now. I'm going to give all of our panellists some time to share their thoughts on the topic. We'll have a bit of a conversation on the panel, and we'll throw it out to all of you for questions as well. That reminder that slido.com, the code is 4295243. But as I said, I'm going to ask a quick first question to each of our panel, which is very simply, what do you mean by diversity and inclusion? So, Geeta first, quick definition for you.
Thank you. Lovely to be here and lovely to see so many great women, brilliant women out there. Yes, it's an interesting question because it's quite a big question. Now, obviously, things have changed over the last few years, and so people are still battling with what it means. But for me, it's always meant the same things. So diversity, equity, inclusion, it's about getting as many voices in the room to make as many sort of positive decisions, create that innovation. I think that's what we need. You can't do that without going as wide as you can, I think, to every kind of group of people. I think the equity piece is really important. It's about removing barriers for everybody. So I want to be able to see a world where everybody has the chance to be their best selves and have the opportunity to do whatever they want to do. And I think there's so many barriers that we kind of place in front of people that we need to try and remove. And sometimes you don't even see them when you're working. And people need to tell you. So there's a bit of that kind of feedback that we need from as many voices as possible. And I think the inclusion bit is prevalent now because of the way things are moving in the global context. So you've got people are getting more entrenched in different viewpoints. It's very difficult to have conversations now. And I think that inclusion part, and we certainly do this in Transform, is try and get people into safe spaces and brave spaces to have difficult conversations about different points of view and different opinions, because then you can at least get closer together. And I think you create that environment where people can talk, people can understand each other, and you get a better sense of inclusion and a sense of belonging, and you can start to hear those voices.
Fantastic, thank you. Ruby, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you?
Super. Firstly, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone, especially to your mother. And firstly, thank you so much for not throwing any rotten tomatoes at me, because I have worked in the private sector as well as the public sector. But I had many, many happy times in HMRC, so yes to the public sector. Absolutely loved it there. So what does D&I mean to me? Well, firstly, it's a celebration. Diversity, to me, is a celebration of our different aspects that we have. We all come from different backgrounds, different walks of life. We all have different perspectives in life, and it's bringing those all to the fore for us to discuss different things in the workplace, etc. And I think it's so important, and inclusion, very briefly, inclusion is all about embedding that diversity into our workplace, into our policies, and also for me, especially as I've always worked in tech, it's all about our products and services. If we think about all those different shades of people, neurodiversity, gender, sex, everything that's different about us and our uniqueness, and if we include that into our products and services, workplace tech, everything, then we are celebrating who we are. And I think there's a famous D&I lady, Verna Myers, who talked about the invitation that you may have heard of. She says diversity is an invitation to a party, And inclusion is the invitation to dance at that party. And what I'll say, I'll add a little bit more to that. I actually think it's also about the right music, making sure the music is right for everyone. And it's also making sure that the environment, the way we get into the building itself, the actual party location, that's accessible to all of us. So I love that little description of it's all about an invitation. And it's big time, it's a celebration for all of us.
Great, thank you. Sherlock, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you?
I absolutely have no idea. I think it's about setting the playing field, so it's an even sort of playing field. I'm not autistic. I'm not disabled because I'm autistic. I'm disabled because of the environment that I'm in, which neurotypicals have created over multiple instances of experiences. I mean, for instance, those two conversations, that I have no idea what either of them were saying. And that's not because they're not speaking English, and quite elegantly. It's just I don't understand the foundations of the conversation, of the intricacy parts of the non-verbal communication within that, and the processing of illustration and guides of that which is non-mathematical. And just a sort of, just a mismatch of understanding. I mean, I think you guys are like magic the way you do that sort of non-verbal communication thing. You can understand what people are thinking. That's just beyond me.
So I think we talked about this just earlier. You'd rather I had spoken in code and mathematics to you to understand. Perfectly okay? Yeah.
Excellent, thank you all. So, how do we get diversity and inclusion right?
Well, difficult question. I think it's, it's interesting listening to Sherlock talking. It's about trying to understand what we're dealing with. I think it is about opening up the doors to as many different types of people. It's about understanding people as much as understanding how to communicate with them, I think. If I think about the work that we do at Transform, which is digital service transformation, a lot of the time when we're trying to build those services, we're trying to build them with everybody in mind. So try and understand what those furthest edge cases are of what you need to build for a public service, and then try and work that into the whole system so that you've got that whole participatory design piece. And I think if you think about how do you get diversity right, it is about doing that in your organisation as well. So it's about understanding where people are coming from. It's about listening to what people are saying. I think it's about understanding, having conversations that are quite difficult. So where we might not understand each other, we need to get closer together to understand how to communicate better. And I think that will help. I've got a particular beef about exclusion, as digital exclusion as well, partly because it's not getting any better, and I think AI might could make it worse if it's not used intentionally. And therefore, the kind of exclusion that we have now, which is like 1.6 million people excluded, so 8 million people lack the essential digital skills before they even got to the AI point. So we've got to try and, so that exists in the world. So our world in our organizations is a microcosm of all of that. And we need to think about these things broadly to understand how we can make everything we do intentionally inclusive. So I think I'll stop there and let you carry on.
Totally agree with what you've said there. And my build is, it starts in a fair few places. It starts at leadership. Definitely if we get our leaders to actually talk about D&I, and I know many boards now have D&I targets. Some people can say they're aspirational, they're just there as a tick box exercise, so we have to be careful, but at least it focuses the mind and people start talking about D&I, and they actually know what D&I stands for. So that's a start as well. And I also think it's also on the ground level that we have to get people talking about diversity inclusion. So coming here today, this is a wonderful, again, celebration of, gender diversity, coming together to have discussions in dialogue that we actually understand people. I remember when I was at Vodafone, and it was the week after, more or less, of the George Floyd Black Lives Matter big, debacle that had happened. And the CEO put together a video conference where all 80,000 of us had to phone in, join this conference, because the question was, what are we going to do about it? This is big. We're going to have to do something about it. And of course, then we started off, black groups within Vodafone. We'd already got a women's group already that I had started off, a Women in Tech group. And that's where we began to see at community level, grassroots level, people actually start talking about diversity and inclusion. That's really important, because I'm sure we've all been to women events where we've had a great speaker and we've all done high fives and we've loved each other, hugged each other and said, this is brilliant. And then we all go back to our desks and then nothing happens again. And this is why it's so important that community-based kind of groups really do drive better thinking, better diversity, better inclusion. And I remember that Black Lives Matter video conference. We heard from young black graduates that told us about microaggressions that they face. They talked to us about how they're not used to, being singled out in occasions. I learned from that. So this is where intersectionality comes in, that we've got to be able to bring the different types of diversity together. And it's great that Sherlock's here. I'm learning so much from you by the very non-vocal words. I'm learning because I'm saying I need to process in a different way to bring people in. And whether it is workplace tech or whether it's communicating in a different way, that is so important. I take a few things away today, and that's one of the important ones. Meeting different people. Nice segue too.
Yeah, high fives. It has no utility whatsoever. But I don't understand how you all got together and decided that was going to be a thing for you. It's very confusing. So there are principles here. I think this stems back to Bentham and utilitarianism. And I think there's a scope which is outbounded by necessity. And it looks as if, right, I'll sort of retract a bit because I was talking in my head much more before I started speaking. So there is a problem with understanding how neurodiverse people, their needs are. And I think this is problematic across the board. So we know, for instance, that the work environment is not always its best for neurotypicals. So you can imagine what it's going to be like for autistic people. So what they've managed to do is they've managed to put some rules in place, and we call them goals. But then you have this sinister and something which happens automatically, and we know that as Goodhart's principle. And that's when the metric itself becomes the goal. So it's not just actually about whether this is working, it's about whether you've put those things in place, whether you've got those tick lists. So for instance, reasonable adjustments. It's not just about, it's about whether you're working enough hours or whether you're having time off. It's about how structures work, how things stabilize within the environment you work. So I'll give you a prime example. I was once working on a job in which I had the responsibility for setting up an environment, and it was sort of quite an important environment. And there was lots of things going wrong, so I carried out quantitative risk assessment, and I was told that I needed to sort of go away and put it in plain English for sort of everybody else to understand. What people don't understand about that is an autistic person, especially somebody who has a mathematical background, they have to do the mathematics first, so they have to write it like a professional document, which usually will take around about 70 pages, which is the equivalent of a small PhD, I suppose. Then they have to reduce that back down into words that neurotypicals who don't come from a technical background understand. And this is all to be done over a period of time in which the neurotypical thinks that you're just going to go away and just do the really easy version quickly and don't understand you have to do a 30,000-foot view of the whole sort of aspect of it. And this means, for me, and I can't talk about other autistic people because, as we said about the goals, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, that's it. We all have different needs. So for me, that means instead of a neurotypical, would think, I've got 5 days to do this. What is the best job that I could do that I'd be happy with doing? Whereas I would say, okay, this needs to be absolutely 100%. And that would mean I give up sleeping, I give up eating, I give up showering, I give up everything that are those normal sort of processes that humans require in order to survive, just so I can get that done. And then usually when that hand's in, somebody turns around and says, yeah, okay, we're still going to do it anyway, which is fundamentally just so soul-destroying.
Thank you. You've all brought us very quickly to the sort of practical nature of how we deal with D&I, because I can see Megan has given us a question on Slido. How do we act as advocates for consistent DE&I celebration and communication? Working in comms, I often see tokenism around awareness days. So I suppose how do we get beyond that tokenism to actually listening to people, solving the challenges that exist?
Yeah, I mean, shall I kick off? Yeah, is that right?
That's the order.
Sorry, no, I'm just following the order. I think that's a really interesting question, so thank you for that. I think what we're trying to do, I suppose, in our organisation is to make to stop the tokenism, because we do need to celebrate. There is this whole celebratory aspect of this, so we do need to celebrate each other and understand that is a good thing. But to get away from the tokenism, you need to have more of those conversations where they're difficult conversations. And so actually trying to get under the skin of what you're saying, because you've come up with Charlotte, you've come up with a problem that somebody needs to understand, somebody else, a neurotypical person needs to understand that from you. And we don't typically have those conversations in the workplace unless you structure them to happen. The groups are great, the ERGs and the ability to groups of people who are like-minded, I suppose, to get together. But I think sometimes you need to break those groups and have cross-cutting conversations in order to stop that kind of tokenism. Is that?
I agree. I think when I started off the 2 women's groups, Women in Tech with Vodafone, Women and Friends in Architecture in Lloyd's Banking Group, the one thing I made sure of was on the committee we had a man, okay? Because I said I don't want it to be an echo chamber where they're just women just talking about possibly women's issues, which is fine, okay? But if we want to make real systemic changes, men have got to listen to the issues that are around us. And I remember going to a couple of guys I knew, great allies, and talked with them and said, would you be interested in coming to be on a committee? And they were over the moon because you mentioned it about world events that we see today, this Sarah Everard case, which is absolutely diabolical. Then we see wars happening, and we're seeing more domestic violence. This now is never been the greatest time to actually get more people that are not like us involved in what we do. And to answer the question about tokenism, I've worked in banking, which is to me personally, it's so much entrenchment by my male colleagues. They're really saying we need real technical people to be in banking. It's no good talking around the periphery, and I've worked in technology all my life. I can't code. I started off coding, but I've moved away more to being more of a strategic person and more holistic as an enterprise architect. And the men come to me and say, well, this is why I'm not at Lloyd's anymore, because they need real hard-nosed technology people, and it's only the men. So there is this real kind of entrenchment that's happening. You're very lucky in the public sector because you're not facing that. It's brilliant that you're accepting women into all great roles at the very top. But in banking, it's very difficult to get through there. And that starts to permeate through and through different industries, unfortunately. So something has to be done. There is this idea that male, pale,
stale.
White colleague is really, really kicking up now that this is not a good thing. And the only way we do that is through conversations, real good conversations. We can't entrench ourselves the other way and I'm an activist, so I think sometimes we should, but there needs to be more conversations that really do, because it is a celebration, right? Never lose sight of the great outcomes that I'm transfixed on the outcomes that can really happen with this. But I know there is a path that we need to tread and have the hard conversations that will take us there.
I'm going to start going to audience questions, and apologies that I'm not going to be able to get through all of them, and there are some fantastic questions coming in. Sherlock, I've got a couple specifically to you. A couple of people saying that what you've said really resonates with them. Any top tips for a neurodivergent trying to get through probation? It feels like it's hard enough to get in, but staying is harder. And there's a second question, which is, how do you deal with your communication being, I guess, seen as funny when you're dead serious?
I so feel for you. So I was born in the early 70s. So there was no test for sort of autism. So I went through the whole sort of. My parents died when I was 2 years old. So I was taken to see a child psychologist around about the age of 4, and they just thought it was RSD or some sort of psychosis from abandonment. So it wasn't until I went to university in America when I was very young, and there was a psychologist there who sort of suggested that it looked as if I had Asperger's syndrome. But again, there was no test until 1994, which was a Lorna Wing test. By the time 1994 came, I was already serving in the British military, so they loved me being autistic, just following straight to the letter, doing everything they asked me to do, and I loved that because it was so much routine. And I'd learned to mask just sort of automatically, so I sort of hid it very much. I mean, I'm sure you've seen, I find it difficult to sort of restrain myself sometimes, and for the majority of the time I end up sitting there with clenched hands, or I sort of move my fingers just because I need some form of pattern recognition if I'm not working. So to go back to your question, the whole thing has changed over the past, I'd say around about 4 or 5 years. I call it I know it's sort of, it may sound a bit funny, but so I didn't actually come out until about 4 years ago as autistic. And I say that as being come out because I think of it fundamentally pretty much the same as telling somebody that you're not exactly the same as that neurotypical sort of process, or what would have been looked at neurotypical process. And I just sort of, I suppose I've just dug into it. So whenever I go into a meeting, I say, look, I'm autistic, very autistic. And at some point, I'm probably going to offend you. It probably doesn't mean I don't like you. It just means that you've said something wrong to offend me. And people are fine with that, and it's cool. I don't think there needs to be a lack of seriousness. I mean, we're looking at women in tech. What's more serious than that? Okay, you guys, if you're into it, having fun and going to parties in the night, that's pretty cool. But when you're in work, you know, you're looking after some of the digital systems that the government owns, which is really, really important. So that individual, you know, you're going through probation, just go and speak to somebody. Just say, look, I'm an Aspie, or, you know, I'm ADHD, or whatever. This is how I come across, and it's not because of anything other than this is just the way my mind works. I think you should be brave about it. I think this is the time. My concern is this, though, which is interesting. It's almost like as if, so we've all come out now, and eventually you're going to get so bored of us, and then it's going to be a witch-finders general come around and get all the autistic people and go, right, we found you. Just like the Nazis did in 1942, funnily enough.
God.
So, following on from that, actually, in some respects...
Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
not at all. The most upvoted question, and there are a few quite similar ones which are talking about the current political environment. So Holly asks, with certain political parties thinking of abolishing the Equality Act, how do we in the civil service continue to celebrate and uphold D&I if they won't?
Oh, gosh. Yes, you can.
I think it's important to understand meritocracy. I think the right people should be getting the right jobs, and I don't care whether you're, you know, Jamaican, Nigerian, whether you're English, whether you're, you know, Indian, whether you're Hispanic, Italian. It doesn't really make it. I think the right people should be getting the good jobs. But there's also this inconsistency with for instance, education. So there's, I mean, I remember, so where I lived, there was quite a big sort of Jamaican community. And again, this was sort of in the 80s. And all of the Jamaican children seemed to be much cleverer than all the white kids in Liverpool. And it was because fundamentally it was their parents that were forcing them to go to school, because they'd come from Jamaica and they didn't have an education, a proper education system. So when they came to England, they embraced that change, and they were saying, you know, this is how it should be. You go to school, you come back with a bad result, and you'll see what happens. You know, whereas English people were just so used to it. They were just, it was just, this is free. You know, nothing's free. The NHS is not free. No government service is free. And it's supposed to be run fundamentally as it should be run, which is with meritocracy, with that element of problem solving and an appropriate method. Does that make sense?
Just going back to the question of who's going to win the next election. I think that we have to stand strong against whatever is going on around us. I think there's a lot of companies, even in the US, who decided that they were going to stick with their D&I targets and what they were trying to do in their strategies because that's what they believed in. And this is not going to go away. And I think whatever happens, yes, it will be challenging because you'll have masters who are not wanting to shout loudly from the rooftops about it. But I think the civil service is strong enough and has lasted long enough to be able to weather that storm and apply the techniques, because actually the techniques we're talking about in being diverse, meritocracy, getting as many people into the funnel, getting as many voices in. That's common sense more than anything else. So I think we need to, you know, grasp the metal and keep going with it and not be worried. I think you can have the argument. I think if the Equality Act does get banned, we will have to fight that on our own terms within the organisations we work in, and stand up for people. I think allyship is massively important in terms of shouting things out when things are not right. This is about being kind to your fellow man. I think this is what it's about ultimately, isn't it? It's about helping everybody. It's what who was it this morning who was talking about supporting on women? Let all the women support the women, but let everybody support everybody. So we just need to be able to understand each other and be able to raise our game to do that.
Yeah, I love that line you said there. The civil service is strong. It really is. And all the places I've worked, civil service has shown the most diversity, the most colourful people that I've met, you know, all shades, all types, neurodiversity. And I think that's the richness of it as well. So irrespective of which party, I really do think, and compare it to the private sector, that's where I've seen less diversity. I've seen, as I mentioned, more entrenchment going on because of, you know, competitiveness, profits, etc. You know, the public service, the civil service is here as a public service to serve humanity, to serve people. And that's what it's doing. And that's where you have these real core values of what it means to be human, to serve people, so it always flourish and always thrive, I believe.
Thanks. I'll go to the audience if anyone wants to put a hand up. We've got a hand right there at the back. Just wait for the mic to come up. Was there one down the front as well? Oh. And we've got another one at the back once you're done there as well.
No.
Can't see, can't hear.
Yeah, I can. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Sorry, right. I'll quieten that a bit. I was going to say, so Sherlock talked about sort of, you know, declaring if you have a neurodiversity or just being honest, I think, like with groups of people and sort of saying, you know, this is my experience so that they can then react and, you know, work differently with you. What about if you sort of don't want to be the poster child for the thing that, you know, might be your neurodiversity, so you would like to work well with other people, but you don't necessarily want to be the poster child for ADHD or, you know, autism within the civil service, and often by kind of declaring it, you might open yourself up to that kind of conversation?
Great, thank you.
I don't want to be sat on this stage. Never do I want to be sat on the stage. I think it just happened, and people sort of liked sort of what I was saying, and then I feel almost guilty now. I work as an ambassador for 5 autistic schools, and that's sort of really important part of my life, because I see I see those children who are, I mean, there's a kid I'm working with now, and he's just a genius at sort of engineering, and he's built this whole sort of impenetrable sort of fire system, like a fire alarm system that could go into many different variations of systems. And one of the other students, his father came to an open day and thought it'd be really good to offer him a job fixing fire sort of, fitting fire alarms. Like as if that was sort of a good thing for this kid who just knows engineering. And that's the unfortunate thing about autism. 68% of us are unemployed. I've been very fortunate because the people I've worked with, like my CISO, despite the fact we get into arguments constantly, and despite the fact that I say some awful things about his intelligence, he really appreciates the work I do, and that's good. And he sort of stands up for me, so I can come out of a meeting and probably insulted half of the people there, and he'll just say, yeah, but look at his output. His output is just great. So it's about, as you said, it's about finding allies. And to the person before who was saying about probation, if that place is not for you, just move somewhere else. You can get a job anywhere. That's if it's not for you, it's not for you. And don't be scared about moving around. I tend to move around incidentally every 2 years. I'm the guy that everybody loves turning up, but loves to leave after about 2 years.
No, I was just going to say, I don't think, if you don't want to be the poster person for anything, you don't have to. But I think it's about the people that you're working with need to understand how you think in order to be able to work with you better. So it's about having that safe space, I think, to have that conversation. And if you just say to people, I don't want you to be putting me on the podium for the next speech, then that's fine. I think it's just about making sure that you're safe in your work, you feel comfortable, and you don't feel like you have to mask or hide what you are. I think that would be mine.
Yeah, that's a weird thing because everybody says to me, don't mask. Why don't you? You don't need to mask with me until I stop masking, and everybody's like, please mask, please mask.
Excellent.
It's just a weird thing. Everybody says it. Everybody says, you don't have to mask with me. Really?
So I'm going to take 2 final questions. There's one right at the back, and while you're passing the mic over, I'm going to throw in one from online, which is, how can we ensure that women are not viewed as a monolith? As a black woman, I rarely see myself reflected on stage or as an attendee. So we'll park that one, and we'll take the one at the back as well.
Hiya, Amber from the Ministry of Justice. So recently for International Women's Day, I saw a Mercedes-Benz advert. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I definitely recommend it. And it's about women, successful women, always having to be the best or the only or the first. So what I'm wondering is, how can we change the narrative to show women that they can be successful and they don't have to be extraordinary?
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. To me, it comes down to the definition of success. Do we look at success through, mainly stereotypical male eyes all the time of being the best, raising the bar to who we are? If we are just happy in ourselves and doing our role as we need to do, that's a definition of success in itself. Do other people agree is another question. But we've got to get used to success isn't measured by the barriers and the thresholds that we've set and seen before. And I think the narrative needs to change about what success is. I wish we had other posters. I drive a Mini. I'd love to see a Mini there. Ruby wins a Mini. Ruby drives a Mini. I'm so happy with my Mini because it gives me so much agility and gets me around where I want to go. And I'm absolutely happy. I love it. So why do we have to have a barrier that's really high? We need more advertisement about good, happy.
I think it's about contentment, isn't it, in your life? And I think it's about. That's very internal. That's very much about your own value set and where you feel comfortable. And I think I think those things come from you, and you can be surrounded by amazing adverts about all sorts of things, and amazing women. And an amazing woman could be any of you. I mean, it doesn't. It's what you feel, how you feel content, how you feel that your life is going, what you can do, whether you think that you're being yourself. I think it's being comfortable in your own skin, and knowing what if you want to climb the Everest or whatever you want to do, then do it. Go do it. Yeah, great. But you don't have to. It's about how you're living your life, and if you're content to do that. I think people put so much pressure on themselves to perform and achieve, in, as you say, in the kind of societal environment that we've built. I don't think that works anymore, and I don't think in the future careers, especially the younger people coming up, they've got even more squiggly careers than I had, and lots of portfolio things going on, and lots of different ways of thinking. They think differently, so this is going to change. I think people are going to be much more trying to find what they want in their own life.
And any thoughts on that question about making sure that women aren't viewed as a monolith as well?
Was that a question about? Could you repeat the question?
Yep. How can we ensure that women are not viewed as a monolith? As a black woman, I rarely see myself reflected on stage or as an attendee.
Yeah.
I mean, forgive me. I don't fully understand that. So for those who know me, you probably know that I'm a synesthete, which means I see everything in colours. I see completely different from you. So everything is in fractals. Not to get into my life story, but which is exceptionally boring, is I don't have a fully functioning amygdala, so I don't have to fly, fright, or freeze. Military loved that. They thought that was great. But that also means it doesn't translate into the visual cortex. So I don't create the projected model of the world that you create. I see it through physics and multiples, and it's a typical neurodiversity, basically. Even most neurodiverse people will have at least one form of synesthesia. I unfortunately have 52 of the 76, which drives me crazy for the majority of the time, which means I don't particularly see color. I mean, as in, I have prosopagnosia also, which means I don't see anybody's faces. I know I spoke about that at the Home Office Women in Tech, which means I just don't see people's faces, and I don't see people's colors, which means I don't see, which is weird, I don't see ethnicity. So I don't understand what everybody's going on about. I find it really weird. I had a friend for like 10 years, and I didn't realize he was Chinese.
Interesting.
How obscure is that? He was
That's
like, what?
Yeah.
It's just really weird.
It's good.
So but going back to this pesky Y chromosome, I'm going to call it a pesky Y chromosome, because you're all XX here, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to get away with that. I wrote a paper about this, and it's some form, I think it was during the Renaissance period. Humans basically attempted to seed the right side brain over to the left. We all know the difference between left and right. Right side is very much artistic, creative. It's got the empathic channels in there. It's got those sort of neurotropic sort of influences that make people, more sort of empathic. Whereas the left-hand brain is just purely about fact, mathematics. It's about problem solving. It's all those sort of interesting places. And it looks as if previous to the Renaissance, it looks as if the right side brain was in control for the majority of time. And this is why these wonderful laws were created, and societies were created in the West, and all of those sort of interesting things. And then for some reason, and then the left would be that awful Y chromosome, which went off and killed people and, created multiple sort of rules which didn't make any sense. And then at some point, the human race decided they were going to hand over complete control to the left side hemisphere of the brain. But women didn't do that, which is quite strange. They didn't have that capacity. I don't know what it is. I think maybe it's something to do with the requirements in order to childbirth, to be mothers. I mean, for instance, there is a type of sort of hormone that's released in women, which means that they just embrace their child and they get all loved up about that. And the same thing happens in men, but it makes them want to play fight. So that's where that training comes in. And it's ironic that men have been blamed for this for years, but it's so if a woman and a man are in bed and the child screams or wakes up, the woman will always wake up first. That's just natural. That's organic. That's evolution. But if a man, so a man won't wake up for that. But if the man hears something outside the window, the man will wake up and the woman won't. And that's about this duality of peace. And I think that's because, like I said, where it all went wrong was we handed over power from the right side brain to the left constantly, which we weren't supposed to do. It was supposed to be, we live in an empathic state, and then when there's a requirement for problem solving, we say, okay, left brain, go and do what you need to do. But as soon as you finish, you then hand it back over to the empathy piece. I think that makes perfect sense to me. Although, yeah, what do I know? Just an aspie.
I was going to answer the question just from my own point of view here, and it's about we all, imposter syndrome, you know, some of us here suffer from that, but we put ourselves forward, okay, or some people put us forward to sit on here, okay. And I think we need to break that monolith that's been spoken of here by having different people on the stage here. That's how we break the monolith. Come be on this stage, as frightening as it is, and we talked about imposter syndrome, and that works across the divide, but everyone will suffer from that. Just let people know who you are and how you think, and that opens up a window of discovery for other people as well. So that's my call to action. You know, don't have us on the stage next time, have different people to break that monolith.
I think that's a good point, because it's about different people and different voices. So, and actually having some young people whose first time jobs people on the stage would be a good thing, because you just mix it up a bit. Yeah. And also, and you get different views then, which is what we're trying to do, isn't it? So
that's a key point. Yeah. As I talked about definition of diversity, if we didn't mention, it's also diversity of opinions as well. It's not just about how we look, who we are, walks of life. It's about different opinions, and they all come together and they form better solutions, better products, better services for, you know, society.
I think there's a leadership point here as well, because it's for, if in your organisation you feel like you're in the group, you're in a women's group or something like that. That's to do with the way you're being led and being able to be your own person and having different people and different voices. And you know, a bunch of women can come together with a load of different opinions. We know this, and that can generate great things. But you know, I think role models are important in this. I think it's role models, allyship, leadership, all of those things will help get that culture right, for you to not feel like you're in a place where you can't be seen, or you're invisible to the rest of the women.
Agree.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to have to end it there, because there are so many more questions that I could put to you. But Sherlock, Ruby and Geeta, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.